Beautiful. And we'll go ahead and get started.
Hmm.
All right, we're live. Here we are. Another week has gone by. I think it's been 2 weeks because dental surgery last week. We're going to talk about DM style yes and or just saying no. This was a discussion at some point, I believe this week. Time is so ephemeral, so slippery. Um, I I've been playing D&D for a long time, since like second edition. In second edition, I feel like it was pretty basic protocol. You said no a lot, right? I think in second edition, your job was to be a referee, more than a storyteller. I think that right now we're in like a renaissance period of tabletop RPGs. And I think that Matt Mercer and other DMs like Matt Mercer are in the public eye. They have attracted a lot of people to the game. And the attraction to the game is not just the game itself, but those style of games has really brought in a lot of people. So I think that there has been an evolution of gameplay where the DM is expected to be more than just an arbiter of the rules, more than just a referee, more than just a guide. They are a storyteller. They are telling a collaborative story, guiding that story, and in the background, there's that expectation that they have memorized all the rules and they're going to enforce those rules, but not if it gets in the way of having fun and being super cool. And I think that's kind of created a bit of a divide in the tabletop community, especially before the Wizards of the Coast self implosion of January 2023. Um, People were very much like, fifth edition is for lovers and storytellers and people that are here for fun. And if you want something else, you need to go somewhere else, you old fashioned Luddites, whatever you pronounce it, right? Like, this isn't your game anymore. Your game is third edition. Your game is Pathfinder 1. Your game is anything but fifth edition. Fifth edition is here for the stories and the vibes and the love. And there was kind of like this pushback of the older players versus the newer players, and the older players being like, I'm here to count silver pieces. I'm here for encumbrance. I'm here to use my 10-foot pole. I want to go in a dungeon. I don't want to go to prom at Hogwarts in your Magic the Gathering Strixhaven campaign. Like, that's not Dungeons and Dragons to me, right? Like, so there was a huge divide when people still had the time and energy to argue about such frivolous things. There was a divide in, what is Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that a lot of that was also tied up in the style of DMing and the style of um, gameplay that evolves from that, right? So I guess my question, we always start with this, right? Like, I throw out some like history and then I ask you to define it. So Dom, what would you define yes and style of DMing as? And I mean, if you,
So
yeah,
I guess starting off the whole yes and thing is a kind is just based off of
correct,
improv,
yeah,
and like at that it got that's when like the whole idea of doing yes and is because, and I don't know if maybe if it did come around because of these shows, it's because these shows are shows, and like
Fe-
they're there to entertain, they're there to
featuring
be.
featuring actors,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so like the whole like improv, like if you're doing an improv show, of course you're gonna try and roll with it. You're not watching people play a game. You're watching people put on a show and be entertaining.
yeah,
And so yeah, you want to have that yes hand because no is not as entertaining, or unless you're making it an entertaining thing. And then sometimes the entertainment is seeing how somebody reacts to the yes and. Like, how are they going to follow up on this, right? Like, that's part of the entertainment. And sometimes, and another thing too is that has kind of like gone into like the actual game now too. Is like sometimes you'll have a player who does the weird thing and asks the weird question, and try and push the envelope just to see how the DM reacts. And it's also the other way around too sometimes.
Mm.
But I feel like that yes and thing happened because people were watching D&D be played online, and at that point it was a show, and that yes and thing, and the actors who were doing it were using their improv skills.
Right.
And,
yeah.
And that's where the yes and came from because it's from improv.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of what's going on right now with that.
All right. So how would you define the just say no style of DMing? What do we mean when we say just say no? Like get DM style.
So I think in that case we're saying, and it's just not. I would say saying just say no has a negative connotation to it. So I wouldn't want to just say no, but the game has rules. You're there to play a game. The rules are there to help us have a framework of how stuff works.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's going to try and do something really outlandish, like yeah, it's okay to say no. Like no, that's not possible.
Mm.
Like you can't do that.
Mm.
It's okay to say that, and yes, after you say that, it's okay to follow up with and give them suggestions of things they can do.
Right. Okay. Compromise.
Like,
Compromise.
The just say no sometimes is it's like okay no, and then move on and go and do something else. At some points, you probably would need to do that, especially if the person's saying something that's very disruptive and not really conducive to the cooperation of the game, right?
Mm.
Like if that person's thing's gonna ruin everybody else's fun, then yeah, say no. But then it's not like yes and there's a follow up. Just no, there's also a follow up too. In both cases, there's always a follow up.
Yeah, so Catazor in chat says, I'm a no, but maybe if. And Cadenex says, in my opinion, yes and is easier to roll with when you want to keep the game going and your imagination is already kind of stretched. I'm not 100% sure what that means.
Why can't you have no and?
Yeah, no but, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
No or.
Yeah.
Here's my stance. Like, I don't think that yes and helps a DM whose imagination is already stretched. I feel like whenever you allow a yes and, you are putting more strain on the DM. Because the DM, in the example that Knex gave in chat, Knex introduces characters riding in on a chocobo without asking the DM if chocobos exist in the campaign setting, without asking if there were stats for the chocobo. He just said he rode in on a chocobo. And then, after introducing his character like that, puts the DM on the spot and asks the DM, can I have a chocobo? And so that's a great example of a player trying to take advantage of the yes and culture. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That yes and culture. Because, like, all right, so the DM's like, yeah, okay, but now they have to look up stats for it, or they have to make up stats for it, or they have to have stats for it.
Now they have to roll with adding chocobos to their world.
Yeah. And then maybe the other players are like, wait, can I have a chocobo too? How much was the chocobo? And then you have to yes and, well, a riding horse is 75 gold, but a chocobo is better than a horse, right? So that's 150 gold, and now we're doing fucking fantasy shopping instead of just playing the adventure. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just the most boring and meanest DM in the entire world, but like, to a certain extent, like, I don't really enjoy doing non-stop yes and. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are moments where, like, yes and comes up and it's like, damn, that's cool. Or what a great idea. How does it happen? Tell me how it happens. What do you guys think should happen if we do this? I try to turn those yes and moments that are noteworthy, that are good enough to kind of give everybody pause, into collaborative storytelling moments for everybody involved. I don't just sit there saying yes to everything that happens. And I have tried. I have tried, because when there was that cultural shift from like the old school adversarial DM versus players, DM is the arbiter of the rules, DM is to a certain extent the enemy, right? They are the dungeon master. They have the cowl, the shadow over their face. They're in a robe. They're behind the shield. Zargon, the wizard, you can't see them. What are they up to? Why are they rolling dice? Just to fuck with us? Why are they rolling random dice for no reason? What does that mean? Um, yeah, that's like that is a type of DMing that I grew up with, but there was this cultural shift where it was like the DM is the storyteller. They're not the enemy. They're not the evil wizard of they're not trying to kill you. They're presenting a story to you and helping you explore that story. They're guiding you through the story. They're not trying to take you out of this world. And I tried very hard to listen to some of that, like yes and kind of culture, and sort of bring that into my games. And I found very quickly that many players, like children who have parents that are too overindulgent, do not use that privilege responsibly. That's what I found. I found that if you are too easy with yes and, if you are too indulgent with yes and, your game very quickly gets way off the rails. Just way off the rails. And you are suddenly homebrewing everything. You're just making stuff up all the time. You're having to constantly arbit rules. And you know what? Sometimes you have a group where that works, and it's just this soft-hearted fun of like, oh, that is a great idea. I bet it's like this. Oh, yeah, sure, that does this much damage. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Have them make a save for this. But the problem is, once in a while, you get a player who is recording every little yes and decision that you make, and basically saying like, well, we did this before, we should be able to do it again. And then you end up in this like weird situation where you've painted yourself into a corner, right? Because your players are like, well, last time you let us drop a whale on the house, it was like this. So I should just get to drop a whale on every house. Why would I ever fight anybody ever again? I'm just going to drop whales on them all the time. Because you let us drop a whale on the house that one time, Crash. Why can't we drop a whale on the house every time? It's like the yes and trap that can kind of rise up if you are not aware that that is something that can happen. Anyways, that's been kind of my experience with the yes and route, is that it is something that not only needs to be used with moderation, but it needs to be used in combination with communication. You need to say, in this instance, that is really cool, and this one time, we're going to do that. So, yes, and what happens? Or yes, and what do we do now? Or yes, and what do you guys think should happen? But you need to make sure that you're very clear in your expectations and your future expectations, that like, just because in this moment I'm saying yes to something outside of the rules, we are not making a new rule. We are not establishing a new rule. We are not changing anything. In this moment, we're saying yes and. That's, to me, like how it works the best. Yeah. But I don't know, what's been your experience with yes and? I've been a player in many of your games. I think you are, and I've said this before, I think you're very strict. I think you're a very strict DM. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, or I wouldn't keep showing up for your games. But I do think you're a very strict DM.
I'm very strict when it comes to rules, but if you figure out a way to use the ways the rules are written in a way that's fun and interesting and cool, I'm gonna let you do it. Like, there's been a lot of times where someone says, and sometimes the rules are like the way it's written, it might be like completely like broken, or something like that. And I'll be like, I mean, hey, I mean, it makes sense. Like that's how the thing works. So let's run with it and see how you can work that and get some type of advantage in it. Another thing about the yes and thing is that going back to the improv stuff is that usually that yes and stuff happens when two players are talking about like, oh, this is something that happened back in the day. You remember that time when we did this, and it's like a flashback, even though it may not have happened in the game, and they're role playing back and forth about it, and that might create some type of backstory, create some type of history, create some type of flavor for the entire world, but it doesn't affect the mechanic, right? Or it doesn't affect the rule. And so at those points, yes, please go for that yes and, because it's just gonna make the game richer like that. But like when you're trying to use the yes and to invent something that's mechanically not in the game without getting everybody on the same page by just like throwing at somebody, say, hey, I want to make this a rule right now, and I'm gonna put you in a corner so that you have to either say yes or no, and we're kind of in a social situation, so it might be kind of awkward to say no at this point, so you're probably gonna say yes, so I'm gonna put this on everybody. That's part when it's it's pretty bad. But yeah, I think I am a pretty strict when it comes to mechanics. But for flavor stuff, yeah, I mean, go for it.
So
I have no problem you making any adjustments to flavor if we're still sticking with the mechanics. And if we want to make mechanical changes, that should be something that should be discussed, not just right in the moment when everybody's pushed into a corner and a decision has to be made right now. Like,
yeah, I think that during game time, during the game, if there is no previously established house rule, you shouldn't, as a player, try to call upon the yes and culture to create new mechanical opportunities for yourself. In chat, they're discussing yes and for non-mechanical things, good. Yes and for mechanical things, not so good. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment. And I think that is the distinction that doesn't get made enough. I think that yes and culturally comes from improv and from actors, right? There are not a lot of rules to improv, right? The whole idea is you want to keep it going. You want to keep the scene going. You want to move and move and move some more. In a role play scene, in a non-mechanical, non-combat scene where we're doing the role-playing part of the game, absolutely, yes and. Oh yeah, well, we're in Kjovestad. Oh well, I happen to have spent 6 years in Kjovestad when I was a soldier for the cathedral. So like, is it possible for me to look up my old contact? Fuck yeah, you say, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Who is your contact? Tell me about your fucking contact. Like, that's a yes and moment. Do you know what I'm saying? Those are the kind of yes ands that I'm after. If the player says, yeah, they're the leader of the whole town, I'm like, okay, this, all right. Let's not get too crazy. Let's not get too crazy, but sure, yeah, they were the leader. They were the leader of the town, sure.
That's pretty crazy, but you can go like the line right here would be like, oh, I grew up in Kjovestad and stuff like that, and I have a house. We can use that as a place to lay low.
Yeah, and maybe
you have a house.
Yeah. Wait, okay.
Now you have a base. When did that
Well, here's the thing. Improv, and this is another thing that the yes and DMs might not know, is that improv goes both ways. It's a bouncing ball. The ball is bouncing back and forth. It's not yes and as a pass, a speed pass. Yeah, they say, yeah, I used to live here and I have a house, and then you say, oh yeah, oh yeah, you're right, you do have a house. Have you been paying taxes on your house? And then they're like, ah, and you're like, oh, well, I that might be something we need to look up now that you're back in town, And it's like, you're right, yes, that is something we need to look up. The taxes that I have maybe not paid on my house. And now we have some real dynamic stuff happening here. Now we're cooking. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Maybe they get to
yeah,
the house and people are squatting in the house.
yeah.
Yeah, like there's
And now that person squatting is that hook that you needed for the next adventure.
absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. So like, yes, and improv, good. Yes, and disguised as wheedling for rule of cool, bad. And that's where I'm at on the yes and. Like I think a lot of people misinterpret yes and as my DM has to say yes to everything that I try to do. And if my DM doesn't say yes to everything I try to do, they're a bad DM. I don't think they understand the origins of yes and come from improv, come from acting, and their strongest place is within the role playing and the storytelling. They have no place, in my opinion, in the mechanics. Now, to counter my own argument, Butler Log in chat says, I improv a lot and I try to understand what the game makers intend for the game to work outside of normal situations to better adjudicate those situations quickly. Now, example, Pathfinder 2e, God save us, says the biggest normal bonus a player will ever get is a +2. But in the adventures, I have noticed that the book says if the player tries this weird as fuck thing, give them a big fat +4. So I take that as a +1/2 is normal, but a +4 is acceptable in extreme situations. Like the most perfect situation, go all the way to +4.
Hmm.
And then let's see. Another example is 5e Dispel Magic. It only removes spells. Yet in multiple Worlds of Warcraft, not Worlds of Warcraft, Wizards of the Coast adventures, it deactivates non-spell effects such as animated creatures, non-spell magics, and I'll add to Butler Log's comment here: skill challenges. It can be used to essentially initiate skill challenge via a caster check. Um,
I can give you the distinction between that
yeah.
and yes and is a lot of that time the player's asking, hey, can I use this spell to try and do this?
Mm,
They're not saying I use this spell to do this.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Uh,
so at that point, at that point, the GM can, yeah, if you want to make the adjustment for the world and make the change in how the world works at that moment, or establish some type of flavor for the world, or some type of mechanic for the world. At that point, everybody's at the table asking, okay, is this a thing that we want to go with? It's not like, hey, I'm doing this. You're going to say yes. You know,
mm-mm. So
at that.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Devil's Advocate in the chat, Cadenix, who is in an upcoming game I'm running. So now I'm kind of nervous based on what he's saying in chat today. Um, So he says, I do think there's moments in TTRPG where games can transition from improv to game, and yes and might not be appropriate for modifying game mechanics and rules, but good for inconsequential fluff, which is what we've been discussing. But he also says, I know I've been a gremlin when I ask, can I combine these items to make another item? The artificer
Mm-hmm.
situation. So yeah, I see that happen all the time. I do that all the time. Pathfinder a couple weeks ago, there was a room full of spinning blade traps. I remembered that there was a room full of chains on the same floor of the dungeon. I said, why don't we just throw all the chains into the room with the spinning blades to break all the spinning blades? And you could hear the gears start to like grind in like Ashwin's brain as he's like, damn, that's a really good fucking idea, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't know a hard and fast Pathfinder solution for that. And
Real,
like,
real, real.
yeah, yeah. And so he, once he kind of like sped back up, he was like, yes, yeah, yes. And what, what else is going to happen here when you do this? And so we had that kind of moment where we took that idea and together as a group, we sort of figured out our way through it. Um, so also, Cadenix says, being retrospective, my favorite item, a bag of 1,000 ball bearings, requires a bit of loosey-goosey rules that are yes Andy. I suppose. I feel like we're taking, and this is very good because I think this is the core problem of
Hmm.
yes and culture. I think that people have hijacked yes and the roleplay tool, and they've turned it into yes and the homebrewing tool. Um, where they're like, I do this cool thing that is outside the rules, and because of yes and culture, the DM has to kind of lean into that and find a way to make that work. It's almost like the rule of cool, which we've discussed I think before, is its own
Hmm.
separate thing, but like the rule of cool I guess supporters have kind of taken this yes and kind of co-opted it into the rule of cool school of thought, right? Where like a cool DM, a good storytelling DM is going to find a way to make your rule of cool request, your homebrew idea, your crazy plot, they're going to find a way to make it work mechanically in the game, or they just ain't a good DM, you know?
Like in those examples, like you guys
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do the take the chains from this room and put it inside this other room to get past this trap.
Right.
Like, to me that doesn't seem like somebody making up rules or coming like that. Just seems like a good idea that works within the context of the game you guys are playing and the situation you're in,
Right.
right? And the game, like in Pathfinder, you have a skill that that can help you with that crafting. Like
Right.
that's when if I was a GM and you said that, the first thing that went in my mind is that, okay, you're trying to take two things, something, and mess with a trap that looks like a thievery and a crafting check.
Right. Okay. Okay. But now, would you give the aforementioned crazy big bonus that Butler Log mentioned because
Probably not.
it's a cool idea,
No, it's a cool idea, and I'm allowing that cool idea is very smart,
okay,
and it
but
makes sense. It makes sense inside the world. It makes
uh
sense inside the context, and it makes sense for your character
huh.
who's trained inside this thing.
But
So at that point, I feel like you just do a normal skill check, which is a normal mechanic in the game.
okay, but see, here's where that breaks down. Why why would someone do something special if there's no benefit, no reward for doing that, right? Like I could have disarmed the traps with my thieves tools. So what benefit was there for me
Are
to
you better? Are you better at crafting or thieves tools?
but I could have argued any crafting bullshit for that. You know what I'm saying? Like I understand that you're see, and this is what I mean about you being a very strict DM.
Mhm.
You are like, I am giving you something special. I'm letting you use crafting, which I wasn't going to let you use before. Like that's your reward. That's your reward for doing it.
Mhm.
Now, a more indulgent DM might say, "Wow, I think personal bias. I think that's a fucking great idea. I'm gonna give you an unheard of +4 Pathfinder 2 bonus to a crafting or a thieves tools check because you've gummed everything up
So
with those shades, or
I think
what Ashwin did is he gave our lockpicker, he gave them 3 chances per trap to represent that the gears were stuck, so they had more
that's
time,
a really cool idea.
right, so they had more time to do that. So I think this kind of builds on what Butler Log was saying, that an understanding of the rules, and I'm going to go even further than understanding, I'm going to say a fluid proficiency with the rules allows a DM, a GM, a storyteller, a referee, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that comfort, that absolute comfort with the rules, that familiarity that is well past knowledge, is what allows a good DM and a good storyteller to rule of cool, to yes and mechanically. And
And so,
I do think that it is a skill. It is a
yeah.
skill based thing. Like you have to know the rules well to be able to say, you know what? That's a great idea. I love the creativity. I think what we'll do is we're going to make this a caster check, but you can be assisted by someone with knowledge and history, right? Like that's the kind of call that a DM who really knows their shit is going to make. And right?
So, and the benefit, the thing that makes that possible too, is
Mm-hmm.
that it is the player asking, the question of, okay, I have this idea. Is this possible? And
Mm.
that gives the GM the opportunity to, okay, let me think about the rules. Let me think about what you're trying to do, and then let me see if we can come up with a solution that we can all agree with.
Right.
It's not like, hey, I'm doing this to get this bonus, or I want to, like, and we had this conversation on the Discord earlier too, and it's about the whole it wasn't the yes and it was a different thing that Orf brought up, but like that idea behind you know asking the GM for a bonus or saying you want this bonus and they're going to do this to get this bonus. Like, let the GM. You say what your character is doing, what your
Right.
character wants to try and do.
Oh yeah, no. And I don't want to call out any particular players, but I do have some players, I do know some players that will say, "Oh, my character's going to do it this way," and then the DM will say, "Okay, well that will result for that I'm going to need this check or this check," and they'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh," and they'll say, "Never mind, I'm not going to do it that way." And it's like, well, I feel like you already just said you're going to do it that way, so fucking commit to it because you already said you were going to do it that way. Like, I don't think you should be backpedaling out of like doing something a certain way, even though you don't like how it was ruled. Do you know what I'm saying? But maybe that's like, that since it's not an official raw situation, right? You're testing what your options are, and then
So,
backing out. But I feel like at that point you're kind of committed, you know?
so for me, if somebody were to do that to me and I told them to think and then they back out, I would say I don't think that's an issue on my end because
Yeah.
the idea is that, like, okay, I have this, like, oh, I'm thinking, like, if your character is like in the moment trying to think of something to do here, and
Hmm.
they're like, okay, maybe I can try this, and then they like take a moment to see, like, okay, what do I have to do that? Well, I'm not really good at doing that, so maybe we should try something else.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, that's fair.
that's
That's
that
fair.
that's what goes in my mind when I give
Uh,
somebody, like, I tell them, okay, if you have to do this, and they back out.
a little
That's
a
the
little
flavor
expl-
behind
a
it.
little exploration of alternate ways of doing something
Mhm.
is fine in moderation. I feel like
Yeah,
it could become a bad habit very quickly though.
but I mean, now if they were to do that
I think
in
I think
character though
it
at
could
role
become
playing.
I think it becomes a fishing technique for some players, right? Like, instead of just doing the fucking thing the way they know they're supposed to do it raw, they're like, well, can I do this with Dex? Well, can I use acrobatics instead? Well, can I do this thing that I'm good at instead of the thing that I'm bad at? Because I just want to be good at everything, because I don't actually want to have anything on my character sheet that's like not good. There are players like that.
I
That
mean, yeah,
it's
there
it's
are,
it's
and
not it's not about playing creatively. It's about gaming every possible bonus they can.
so usually if that's happening,
Yeah.
like I probably won't let it like happen more than two times, right?
Hmm.
Because but like the idea is that the way I see it is that if they're sitting here, if the players are sitting here like, okay, we have this situation, right, and I'm thinking that this is happening in character and they're role playing it, even though we may not be speaking in like character. They're like talking back and forth and saying like, okay, well, I'm pretty good at doing this, so I could probably do it this way, but I don't know if you can do it this way. So we need to try and think of ways that we can all get through this, safely. And
Mm.
so that's what I'm thinking when players are like asking me questions about, okay, if we were to do it this way, what mechanics would we have to do? Yeah, they're asking me out of character and it sounds metagamey, but I'm thinking that this is actually an in character, thing of them talking back and forth and
Right,
talking
right.
about, no, they know what they're good at, and so they're going to try and think of a way that they can do this the best way they can. Like, if I'm not good at using a knife, so I'm going to think of, like, in real life, let's say I'm not good at cooking something, right? I'm going to try and think of ways that I could get past my own weakness to do this thing instead of just doing it,
Mm.
right? And I think that's okay. But yeah, if
Okay.
it's like dragging the game down, then at that point I'm gonna be like, I mean, you guys gonna, like, you're not thinking of any way to do it. You guys have been sitting here for a while. You're gonna have to do it at some point.
Okay. Fair.
So go
Fair.
for it.
All right. So
Uh,
checking with chat real quick. Let's see. Cadenex says a common yes and is, can I sneak up on this guy and knock him out? Again, I don't think you're really understanding yes and here, but maybe you are understanding it in the way that I feel is a misunderstanding. Like, there is no good mechanic for Assassin's Creeding your way through a scenario raw, in my fucking opinion. Unless the adventure is designed that way by making all of the monsters minions, giving all the monsters very low hit points so that a well-placed sneak attack can knock them out. There is no rule for grappling someone and choking them out. Thank God, because 5th edition D&D, you could have a plus 15 grapple by like level 3 nowadays. So, God fucking forbid. That's the problem, right? You've played in games with me, Dom, where I allow people to sneak up on somebody and knock them out, right? Because it's thematic to that part of the adventure, right? We all are on the same page. We're all in agreement. Okay, we're doing an infiltration right now. We've got Paris Rooftops playing. If Paris Rooftops is playing, you gotta be able to sneak up and knock somebody out. That's just how it do, baby. Like,
Yeah.
but that's
I thought about this a lot, actually. Like that scenario, I thought about, like, how would you do this and make it feel fun, and but not break. And I thought about it for a second, and after we finish, I'll talk to you about it. I have an idea.
It's a hard sell for new players. I constantly see new players that are like, "Oh, the guard's asleep. I run up and I slit their throat." And it's like, "Cool, you run up and you attack them with advantage and you do a lot of damage to them, and then they get up and they start fighting and they're like, "What? I just said I ran up and I slit their throat. They were sleeping." And I'm like, "Yes, but they have a lot of hit points because this is a fucking game." So like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if everyone could be killed their fucking sleep, the sleep spell would be even more powerful than it already is. Like, that's just not. In order to play a game,
Also,
and people talk to me about this. People reached out to me because I was very upset with my last Alkenstar prep about how video gaming Pathfinder 2 was. And a lot of people reached out to me, including my own kid, and were like, "You need to calm your shit down, old man." You know what I'm saying? Like, this is literally a game. This is a game. And maybe Pathfinder 2 is more board gamey and more video gamey than 5th edition. And I know you Pathfinder kids out there are frothing at the mouth. And you say, "No, it's not. 5e's just as much a video game. Solasta, etc., etc." Like, listen. I get it. But this is the best example of how video gamey both systems are. There is no way to sneak up and knock a guard out without using magic. There's no way to do it. The end. Like, there's just no way to do it unless you are an assassin rogue doing doing a shitload of damage and they don't have a lot of hit points. There's just no way to do it without magic. And so those need to be skill challenges in a way. Like, they have to be skill challenges, and they have to be a, God forbid, get ready to get super video gamey. Final Fantasy 16 linear super video gamey over here. They got to be fucking cutscenes. Like, skill challenge cutscenes. If you succeed at this skill challenge, you knock the guard out and you keep going. If you fail, guess we're getting the combat map out. We're rolling initiative. Like, it's that black and white. It's that cut and dry. Were you able to knock them out? Can you knock every single person in the world out? No. You can knock the ones out that I gave you fucking permission to knock out, because that's like part of the adventure, and that's the kind of thing we're doing right now in the adventure. Is that going to be a mechanic that we add to the world patch document? Like, can you go around knocking everybody fucking out? No. You can't.
Like, that is how we are running this scene.
Right. Yes. And that's collaborative storytelling, communication, adaptation. That's the yes and. That's the yes and that you need to see in your games that you want to see in the world. All right. Yeah.
In fifth edition, you can hold your breath for so long, so it's really difficult to choke somebody out.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're choking me? I guess we got 50 combat rounds to go. Yeah, like, it's so fucking dumb. It's just so dumb. God, I was watching Oni piece today. Luffy was drowning again. Dude was drowning for 3 episodes, Dom. I was like, what is this, 5th edition D&D? Come on! Come on! What are you doing to me? Drowning for 3 episodes. Unreal. So, all right. When you, oh my gosh. Butler Log says, going back to what we said earlier, when someone goes deeper into how they do something other than acrobatics or whatever your game is, definitely reward it. If your game is one where this is just the norm, it doesn't need special bonuses unless it warrants it. Reward the type of play
I
you
mean,
want to
yeah,
see more of.
yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm
I've
really bad
gotten
at that. I'm
so
really bad at that.
I've gotten so fucking spoiled by the quality of players in my games. I am just a rich, like ancient red dragon on a mountain of fucking gold. I have some of the best players, in my opinion, in the world. In the world, I have some of the best players in the world. You'll never get to see it, Dom, but the Odyssey finale, oh my gosh, just some of the best role playing I've ever seen in my life. Like, just incredible players. So maybe I'm just jaded on the whole, like, well, yeah, well, what if I used acrobatics to do this instead? Or what if I did that? And it's just like, I don't fucking care. Sure, that sounds good. Like, I've gotten so used to that sort of thing happening that to me, and this sounds terrible, it's just not as special anymore. But I forget because I haven't really played with new players in a way.
Cinematic bonus.
Oh man, I haven't used that cinematic bonus in years. The cinematic bonus
Yeah.
was a training tool, and once they were trained, I sort of just phased it out like a bastard. But yeah, if you do want players to do stuff like that, definitely consider the cinematic bonus. If they do something like really cool, if they describe it really, really well, give them that +1 bonus. Give them a +2 bonus if you're playing 5th edition D&D. If they're milking it, like a certain Oresian monk, if they're milking it too hard, maybe don't. But if it's helping them kind of be engaged a bit more and use the environment a bit more, get a bit more involved in what's going on, then oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
You know
Yeah.
what? I think I'm gonna try and bring that back, but I'm gonna have it set. You have once per combat.
Oh, okay. Once per combat, do a cinematic.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's smart. You're so good at this rules design stuff, man. Um, all right. So let's see. Skill challenge from Butler Log for knocking people out, of course. Because hit point system makes it impossible. Let's see. YouTube. Let's see. YouTube comment can measure up to the world rocking of your kid telling you not pops. Yeah, true. Fair enough. Um. Let's see. Here's the thing that I want to point out. Now, we called this particular vodcast episode Yes and or Just No. I want to point out that I have played with a DM who was so raw and so by the book that, like, he said no to everything. Everything. We're like, can we scout ahead? No. Can we climb on the roof? He's like, no. Like, I mean, like, if the adventure didn't mention that something was possible, this guy was like, no. And this wasn't when I was in high school. This was as an adult, playing with other adults, with an adult DM.
Mhm.
Um, when you have a culture like that of saying no to everything, of you need a feat for that, you need a skill for that, you need this for that, you need that for that, you can't do this, you can't do that, that doesn't happen. When you have that sort of culture, um, everything that we are discussing dies. No one says, well, can I use acrobatics instead? No one says, well, what if I tried to throw the chains into the room to slow down the traps? No one ever does those things anymore. It is the death of creativity. And it is a terrible thing. I think a lot of people know that I don't know. Maybe they think I'm a hard ass when I run my games. Maybe they think I'm a player worshiper who's there living that yes and lifestyle, or maybe they see that I'm somewhere in the middle, just trying to use whatever tools are best for that scene in that moment. But I think a lot of people expected us to hang out tonight and for me to say, you gotta say no all the time.
No,
Say
no.
no all the time. The reason I'm throwing this Hero Quest episode in the background while we're chatting, this is the Hero Quest episode where they went to get the Spirit Blade from the ancient Flame Dragon, and they had in a previous episode, against my better judgment, befriended a dragon that was enslaved by orcs, and they brought this dragon with them to fight the dragon that had the Spirit Blade, and so it turned into this ridiculous like Pokemon kaiju battle in this volcanic dragon's lair. We would not have had this episode the way it is if I had been like, no, there are no skills in the game that would allow you to befriend this enslaved dragon. The end. Stop fucking asking. You don't have a class ability, you don't have a spell, you don't have anything that can do this. Stop it. Right? But like, they were going out of their way to not attack the enslaved dragon, only attack the rider, only attack the orcs, only attack the bad guys, breaking the chains to free the dragon, healing the dragon's wounds, trying to save the dragon. It was beautiful, right? And so, like, yeah, like, I leaned into that. I said, yes, and tell me more. Tell me more about how you're saving this dragon. Tell me more about how you're going to free this dragon and rehabilitate its broken, war-torn heart. And then, you know, when they were like, man, it'd be so cool if we could bring this dragon to fight the other dragon, I was like, I mean, sounds pretty cool to me. Yeah, sounds pretty cool to me. Sounds pretty cool to me. The best things that have ever happened in any game that I have run have been because the players were creative and I leaned into that creativity. All of the best moments for, I don't even remember how long I've been playing D&D anymore, for the last 29 years, the best things that have ever happened in any game have been because of player creativity and the DM leaning into that creativity. It's not because somebody wrote a really good raw adventure. It's not because people had a really cool homebrew adventure. It is because organically the story happened. It changed. It evolved in the moment into something bigger than anyone had planned. Like, so yes and is very, very important. But saying no is also so fucking important. And with with the last 15 minutes that we have, we need to talk about why saying no is so goddamn important. So Dom, why is saying no so goddamn important?
To keep the game, it's part of it is to keep the game on track and to make sure that this collaborative game that we're playing is still a collaborative game that we're all playing.
Yep. I mean, my stance on it is a DM, a GM, a storyteller, whatever system you're playing in, a guide, right? They are many things. They are the director. They're the human resource manager. They're the therapist. They're apparently nowadays the fucking game designer, the software engineer. They're a graphic artist. They're a map maker, a cartographer. They are a event planner. They are a lot of things. They are also a referee. They are also the referee. I see so many complaints about DMs who don't know the rules. I see an equal amount of complaints about players who don't know the rules. The response to players not knowing the rules is, why should they? Why should they? They're just there to have fun. Okay. Weird flex. The argument I hear all the time about the DMs knowing the rules, that's their job. That's their job. All right, it's literally my job because I get paid to run games. So sure, yeah, I definitely need to know the rules. But as a player, I'm a player. You know what else are players? Athletes who are playing a sport. If I showed up to play softball for the company softball game and I hit my boss in the fucking nuts with the bat, it wouldn't be good. I couldn't say, well, I didn't know the rules. They would say, well, why did you play then? Right? Like, why did you sign up to play if you don't know the rules? Well, why should I? You know? Like, I joined the company bowling team, and I throw the ball overhand like a fucking hill giant throwing a boulder, and I get everybody banned from the bowling alley, and they say, Crash, why the fuck did you do that? It's like, well, I don't know how to bowl. Well, why did you fucking sign up for the bowling team? If you don't know how to bowl, why'd you sign up for the fucking?
I'm just here to have fun.
I'm just here to have fun. I want to hang out with my friends. Like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? You know, like, so. Here's the thing. You, me, the world, we accept. It's the GM's job to know the rules. So here's the fucking truth of that matter. Let them do the job. And sometimes the job is to say, as the guy that's or the girl, the person that's supposed to know the rules, is to say, no, that's not in the rules. No, you can't do that. No, you don't have that ability. No, it's not your turn. No,
No, it's not your turn.
No, you've run out of reactions. No, you aren't in this scene. You're across town. No, you don't know how to cast that spell. No, you're out of incense. You can't summon a familiar. No, you can't speak to that guy's horse because handle animals is a ritual and you don't have 10 minutes to cast it. No, you can't draw a mustache on Commander Gaius. No, right, these are the things that you need to just be able to go in and say, no, that's not going to happen. And you are fucking not only empowered to do it, it is your obligation because as the whole goddamn world will remind you, knowing the rules is your job.
That's true.
So why would they be mad at you for doing your job?
I feel like at the end of this episode, it's gonna be yes and but no.
Yeah. Oh my God. The things that I have had to say no to in the last 29 years, the things that I have had to say no to, but compared to the things I have said yes to, dear God, I will not be getting into Christian heaven based on the things that I have said yes to in Dungeons and Dragons. Let me tell you that, okay? Oh, you want to put this dead person's head in a hat box so you can carry it around town without, no, we didn't say a hat box, a cake box. And I'm like, oh, well, that changes everything. Let me just Google how many human heads could fit in a hat box real quick. Like, yeah.
Oh, no, the cake box.
Oh, it was a cake box. Yeah. Yeah. So, like, you have to say yes, and you have to say no. And if you watched all the way through the VODCAST, we just got you for 53 minutes just to tell you that very simple fact that you're going to have to learn as a DM, as a GM, as a guide, as a storyteller. You're going to have to learn when to say yes and when to say no, when to say yes and when to say no but. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. So Butler Log says, mechanics inform RP as opposed to getting in the way of them. When the mechanics are good, then the RP is enhanced. That sounds like a veiled pro Pathfinder 2 comment. That's what that sounds like. Yeah. That sounds like a Pathfinder sympathy comment right there. But you're not wrong. Yeah. You're not wrong.
Having like something that understanding how a mechanic works definitely helps when I'm trying to role play.
Oh, for
Whether
sure.
that's role playing in combat or role playing out of combat.
Mm, yep. Uh, now something else that needs to be brought up is DM style consistency. And I'm really bad with this. I run, what, 5 games? I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
Like 5 games, I'm playing a game, I work full time, I raise a kid, I got 2 dogs, I got a wife, I got all this other shit I'm dealing with. So, what does this say? Uh, yes. So I have all these things that I have to do, and it's hard to remember all of these like yes and house rules, these no buts rules policies. That's why we have the world patch document. We have
Mhm.
that world patch document to hold me accountable to myself, because without consistency things start to feel arbitrary, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if I say to Dom, of course you could do this, Dom, and then I say, you can't do that, Will, it starts to look like I don't want Will to do things, right? I don't like Will,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like Dom, I don't like Will. That's what it looks like. It
Yeah.
could be that I forgot that Dom could do this thing. And Will doesn't want to sound like a 6-year-old baby and say, but you let Dom do it, right? They just say,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But like, I don't know if I'm doing that or not, but I do know that I have had DMs that were like, they had players they did not like, and they were like, you can't do that. And then somebody else is like, can I do that? And they're like, of course. You're perfect and wonderful. Yes, you can do that. So yeah, and I mean maybe I've done that too. That's part of why we have. That's part of why we have the world patch document, because I want a place where players could say, "But Crash, you said we could do this. You wrote it down." And I'll be like, "Well, shit. If it's in that document, I guess we're gonna do it." I
Don't worry.
I've
Don't
said that
worry.
before. I've
Just
said,
use it while you can. It might not be.
yeah, right, yeah. Enjoy it while you can, because it ain't gonna be there next time. Yeah, but like that's the thing. Fifth edition as a system is so undefined, so half baked, so lazily designed that yeah, like we constantly were running into things like that. How does this work? How does that work? How big is a creature that's 8 squares by 8 squares? Like how do we even quantify that? Is it just gargantuan? Gargantuan's like what? Not a size, right? Colossal? Colossal's not a size. Gargantuan's 4 by 4. What's bigger than gargantuan? Is there anything? Is that it? Is that the biggest you can get? We're playing in VTT, baby. There's no limits to how big shit can get. There's no limits to how small things could be. Like we had to go and make these things, right? Because we
Yeah.
wanted to still have these opportunities to say yes and no but, and sometimes just no, and we wanted to do so in a consistent way, and that's why we had to write it down. You gotta write it down, like, and it's a lot of extra work. But that consistency matters. People are not going to feel comfortable getting creative. They're not going to feel comfortable going outside of their box, leaving their lane, if they don't think it's going to be respected through consistency. That's my take. That's my take. I don't know what your take is
Yeah.
on it, but
Yeah.
that's
I'm a pretty big component of trying to be consistent. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I only ever really run one game at a time, so I can make
mm,
sure I'm consistent. Because I know I don't write stuff down hardly,
yeah,
and so I know that I want to make sure I'm consistent. So I try and only run one game, and whenever I make a decision, I try and make sure that decision comes up more than once, so
mm,
that it becomes reinforced and it becomes a staple for the game, so that everybody knows how it works.
right, right.
Yeah.
And with one game, like you can track those things a little bit better, and
Yeah.
you can track your own consistency a lot better. Um,
Hmm.
this is my first time running the same campaign 3 times at the same time, like concurrent games of the same
Yeah.
exact campaign, and I am struggling. Like I consider myself to be rather skilled at running tabletop games, and I am finding it to be very difficult. And this is with a very well supported game and lots of resources at my disposal, and I'm still finding it to be very difficult. I don't know how these franchise dungeon masters are running like 5 Curse Strads a week, or 7 Curse Strads a week, or 3 Curse Strads a week, 3 Dragon Lance a week, and then 2 Pathfinder games a week. Like, I don't know how they're doing it, like without completely losing their minds. Like, how do you remember that this NPC's dead in this timeline, but they're alive in this timeline, and they said this to this person in this timeline, but that exact same NPC didn't say this information to this timeline? Like, I don't know how they're doing it, honestly. I don't know how they're doing it.
I think they're probably just making sure that NPC is saying the exact same thing to the group at the exact same time all the time.
Gosh, I just feel like those games they got to be a little stale, right? Like, role-play wise, they got to be.
It's probably really stale for the GM, because they've been doing it the same thing. But if it's my first time there, and maybe he has it as like a science now, where it's like he knows the lines, they know the cadence, they can say it, and it'll be like almost like natural because they've been doing it for so long. At that point, it's my first time seeing this. It's probably okay.
I don't know, man.
It's probably super stale.
I just don't know how it could be. And we're getting so off topic here, but I just don't. I just don't know how that could be organic. Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe that's a topic for another podcast. But I just don't know how you could maintain an organic campaign while running so many of the same games concurrently, and that's something.
It's probably not organic anymore.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a huge part of my post-mortem for Curse of Strahd when all 3 of the Curse of Strahd games end. It's going to be something that I definitely go into deep discussion about. But anyways, that's way off topic. I think honestly that we kind of closed this bitch out about 5 minutes ago. With the sometimes you say yes, sometimes you say yes, and sometimes you got to say no, sometimes you got to say no. But, and that's really what it comes down to. And you have to be willing to say all, to mix it up, to say all 4.
All 4 of them,
yeah. Well, in that regard, we are done with our podcast for the week. Hopefully, anybody watching this, it was informative, or at least fun to listen to. Quick announcements. We got Red Hand Doom tomorrow. We've got Daybreak on Sunday morning. We got Mythic Odyssey Sunday night. We're going to be prepping some Alkenstar Monday night. CyberPunk Red on Tuesday. Pathfinder Abomination Vaults on Tuesday. Wednesday, we will continue to fight the good fight in Dragon's Dogma. Yeah.
Also, Saturday is Orcs Raiders.
Saturday night is Orcs Raiders game, or Saturday
from 2 to 5.
Okay, Saturday right after Red Hand Doom is the Raiders game. So tonight, then, happening pretty much right now, is Orf's other game, Rime of the Frost Maiden. Man, we've got to just like pre-record this stuff and just like play it like at the end of the.
Well, actually, you know what you do? We can look at the game schedule in the Discord.
Oh, fair. Well, I mean, another time, because I got other stuff I got to do. Anyways, yeah. All right.
If you're on the Discord and you're trying to see what games are going on right now, there's a new channel called Game Schedules that has all of our games and where to watch them live.
Fair enough. All right. I don't know what our next podcast is going to be about. I don't know if it's even going to be next Friday. I don't know. If something comes up that we feel like we want to talk about, we'll have another podcast. Any other announcements before we adjourn?
No, I don't think so.
All right, man. Enjoy your Friday night. I know I'm going to enjoy mine. I hope everybody out there has a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Take care.